The best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmets, casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got...
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the DFS Army Bold Call Fantasy Football Season-Long Podcast, where we break down everything about your fantasy draft. My name is Kevin Allen. I am the host, a.k.a. the Geek. Today, I'm joined, as always, by Season-Long AlanSeslowsky. What's up, my man?
Good morning, Sunday morning. We are in the heart of fantasy football research and study now. I mean, not only, we've been doing this all year, as long with our special guest who you'll introduce in a moment, but now the casual players, now the players that are, even with baseball and basketball coming back, I hear a lot of fantasy football talk. People have more confidence in the NFL than they do in the other sports actually lasting the season. So here we go.
This is the time when the conversation amongst the more casual fan starts to heat up. We're starting to think about our draft. Still, we're going to draft in August. We're starting to think about it. And coming on today is our newest DFS Army contributor in the season-long space. That's Flex Shane. What's up, Shane?
What is going on, gentlemen? Al always likes to class it up with the season-long strategy, and it's just like stepping up the session, and he always adds sophistication to it, Al, and that's why I love it.
He's a sophisticated person. Kevin, if you knew him as long as I do, you would not say that he was sophisticated at all.
Right. I was going to say the Geek lived in a similar housing unit as I did back in the college days, and he can attest to my lack of sophistication.
Yeah,
so if you think I have it, I've developed it over time.
Whatever you think you're seeing, that ain't what I know. But here we go. So
yes, I just got to say though, so I listen to your podcast every week. It's definitely one of my must listens to. And I just love, obviously the content is gold. That's why I listen to it. But one of my favorite things is just the dynamic between you two guys. Because you guys have known each other for so many years. There's always like the little shots. And it's a great dynamic. So I love what you guys do. Thanks for having me on the pod.
Thanks, my man.
Thanks for joining the team, man. We need your help now that the Geek is off doing his MMA and his League of Legends and building and frankly building a great business with Sports Bet Army too. So yeah. I need a little extra help this year handling the demand for season long, and I couldn't think of someone better.
There we go. And before we go on, I want to mention a very, very special Bold Call episode coming up. And Says, why don't you tell us about what's coming and when?
Oh, thanks for that lead off there. So for longtime listeners to the Bold Call podcast, you hear us often talk about Chris Liss on RotoWire, and we hooked the big fish. He is coming to this podcast, and Geek is graciously going to give me some alone time with him. And so I'm going to interview Chris Liss one-on-one. We're going to talk about how he has built a mega website, RotoWire, over the last 25 years in the fantasy business. Going to give some great advice, not just on football, but how to get into the fantasy industry, how to help build your profile. And frankly, he is someone, though DFS Army has built its own niche and its own little comfortable corner where we help a lot of people win a lot of money, he is going to be providing some great content on how to help grow us to the next level. I have so many great questions. Chris Liss of RotoWire is coming on the podcast July 28th. I can't wait.
There we go. So that is tomorrow if you're listening live, and that's going to be really excited. I can't wait.
It's a week from Tuesday.
Well, tomorrow's July 20th.
Right.
Oh, and it's July 28th?
Yes, 28th.
They said July 20th. I'm like, oh, wait, you should just say it's tomorrow. No. All right. A week from
Tuesday.
Week from Tuesday. There we go.
One of the things I love about Chris Liss is that, again, we can listen to a lot of analysts talk about their rankings, but Chris Liss, the reason that I love listening to him is because he talks about game theory. And it's so important in fantasy football simply because every draft is different. Your lineups are always going to be different. Setting your lineups on a weekly basis is different because your team is unique. Chris Liss helps navigate you through strategy, and I'm definitely going to be listening.
Similar to exactly what the Geek does on his Vegas pod. That's why I thought it was a perfect fit for us. So if we could have someone come on and talk strategy for season long, similar to how the Geeks Vegas Lines does for DFS, and if we can have that, I mean, that's exactly what we're aiming for. So you hit it exactly on the head.
And that's really the approach to fantasy across the board. One of the things we always talk about, and we're going to jump into the wide receiver rankings here momentarily, but one of the things we always talk about is, you don't just, for example, play your rankings. You want to play ADP against your rankings and the strategy, and where can I reach for a player and where can I wait for a player to drop for me? How do I draft with a value-based approach in mind, where I'm not necessarily locked into some ridiculous preset approach. I'm going 0 RB today. I think people who do that just are bad at DFS or bad at fantasy, rather, and certainly bad at drafting. Whereas you just have to go in with a strategy, but take what the draft gives you. And we've been doing a lot of high-end, high-dollar fantasy leagues, and Sez does a ton of them as well. And the biggest thing you see is how different one draft goes to the next. One draft, you've got Josh Allen drop into the 9th round, and other ones you've got to reach for him in the 4th. Weird things like that happen frequently. Runs on tight end, runs on the wide receiver position. And Shane, that brings us around to talking wide receiver rankings. Your wide receiver rankings dropped in the DFS Army draft kit.
Yes, sir.
Very recently. And so we're going to go over that a little bit here and look at some interesting takes, some interesting choices, some interesting deviations, I would say, from ADP, which is, what I'm all about. So I'm going to start right. When you talk about wide receiver, we already kind of hashed out the early discussions, and everybody knows Michael Thomas is the top guy, and Adams and Hopkins and Tyreek Hill make up the top 4. And you have pretty much what I would say is the consensus going on. There's an area that I want to talk about, guys, and this is just everybody's draft. They're ranked similar, but the Twins from Tampa.
Yes.
This is a really interesting situation. I never wind up with either of these guys on any of my teams, which is why I'm bringing it up, right? They never wind up on my teams, neither Evans nor Chris Godwin. And the main reason is the GOAT is in a new team, and I just don't know what he's going to do over there. It's new. Shane, you've got Evans and Godwin consecutively.
Yep.
6 and 7. Godwin, then Evans in your rankings. So tell me what your feelings are on a new quarterback situation, a guy who is not Jameis Winston. We know Jameis Winston produces. He's Ryan Fitzpatrick-like in his fantasy glory. He just produces great scores around him. Now these guys are going to have someone else, Tom Brady, more conservative. Do you think they can produce like they have the last couple of years?
Well, what's interesting about that is that, the type of quarterback that Tom Brady is, he's a guy who relies on trust with his wide receivers, because he is the type of quarterback that will anticipate the pass, and he will throw the ball before the wide receivers in that position. So to me, that favors a guy like a Chris Godwin, who's shown that he can be elite at the highest level. And he's a guy that can break tackles. He's a guy that can get open, create separation. And so for me, I actually I've got Chris Godwin ranked just ahead of Mike Evans. And simply put, I think that he's a better player than Mike Evans. I mean, he's kind of gotten to that point. He showed it last year. And, the type of wide receiver that Tom Brady has always trusted is a guy like a Julian Edelman, like a Wes Welker. I mean, obviously he had Randy Moss for a number of years, but it's the type of players that can create that separation, and they will make their break when the ball is in the air. And the difference between a guy like Chris Godwin and a Mike Evans is that Mike Evans is more of a big body type wide receiver. I mean, he's the kind of player that will go up, outbody the defensive back and catch the ball, but he'll fall. Whereas Chris Godwin will catch the ball in stride, similar to a guy like Julian Edelman. But I mean, let's be honest. I'm a Patriots fan. I love Julian Edelman, J11 till I die. But Chris Godwin is a superior wide receiver, at least today. And I think that you are doing yourself a disservice if you play the narrative that Tom Brady coming to a new team is going to put a break on that offense. I mean, the one difference between him and Jameis is obviously Jameis is kind of a DGAF quarterback, right? He'll just throw the ball. He'll huck it up. He'll put up 30 interceptions. Tom Brady's not going to do that. So if you talk about massive upside, I think that it hurts Mike Evans a little bit more than it hurts Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin's going to be his number 1 wide receiver. And look, I think Godwin's going to have a fantastic season.
Says, if you are looking at the rankings and you're sitting at wherever WR6, WR7 is going, how confident are you to pull the trigger on one of these Tampa twins? Or are you saying, you know what, let somebody else grab him? Zach Ertz is still hanging around, or Mark Andrews is still hanging around, or you know what, it's the end of the second round. I could probably get, another running back that maybe not be the greatest. But are you pulling the trigger for these two guys?
Well, I agree with what Shane said in the sense that I have Godwin rated higher than Evans, but I disagree with him in the sense where he has them ranked. So, continuity, you hear it talked about on a lot of different podcasts, is going to be key this year. And trust, which Shane pointed out, is key for Tom Brady. Geek. So if it works out with Godwin, he certainly can play that Julian Edelman role in the slot. And the reason I have Mike Evans quite a bit lower is because as you've owned Mike Evans in every dynasty league I'm in with you, so you know this firsthand. I mean, yes, there's been a safe floor every year, but Mike Evans, with the exception of a couple of years, has always broached on double-digit touchdowns. It's my fear, or my concern, I should say, that when Tom Brady is now the quarterback, that when they get into the red zone, he's going to be looking for another guy he trusts named Rob Gronkowski. And I think that we could see one of those years where Mike Evans still gets his 1,000 yards. Maybe it's like 75 catches, but the touchdown total could be like 4 and not 9. And that is a major problem for Mike Evans if Gronk is healthy.
One issue with Evans, for people who haven't ridden with him season after season, they don't know it because it doesn't show up in the stat line. This is one of those things where it's really good to have dynasty leagues, because you get a feel for certain players and how their production comes. At the end of the year, a lot of people just look and go, oh, Mike Evans scored 300 fantasy points, and he was WR4 or WR7 according to his total fantasy points, which is true. But his production comes in spurts. Very much explosive games followed by very, very low. He's not a very consistent wide receiver the way some others like him, even some others ranked below him would be. He's just not that guy. He's very much in DFS. He's a GPP play, never a cash play.
Can I ask you guys a question? And I think that all the 3 points that we all made on Mike Evans and the top of those rankings, they're all true. It's just, again, it's where are you going to take them? I mean, we all agree Godwin's the better play. We agree that Mike Evans is a little bit more uncertain, even more than usual.
Yeah, and I didn't even get into just Corona, not much time to practice together, new quarterback. I'm personally avoiding as much as possible any situation for new quarterbacks, new wide receivers, anything that doesn't have longevity. I think adds an element of risk this year that we haven't seen in the past, just because these teams just haven't practiced together. And I think they're going to be sloppy, and I think the offense is going to look bad for a few weeks while they get their shit together.
Yeah, perfectly reasonable. Here's my question to you guys, and Geek, you can use this and kind of spin it to Shane. Which rookie wide receiver, because we talked about how we're not going to, have much confidence in new players offseason, but are there any rookie wide receivers that you think have a chance to actually be productive in year one, Shane?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is yes. I think that they could be productive. Guys that I think potentially have that upside. CeeDee Lamb was my rookie wide receiver 1. I think it was, most
dynasty or for a redraft.
I'm talking about in dynasty. We're talking about the rookies, right?
Yeah, but I'm saying rookies. In redraft. So
in rookie draft, yeah. If I was doing my rookie draft, the first wide receiver.
Hold on.
Season long.
Not rookie draft. We're talking about
I understand that. I understand that.
Yeah, okay.
I understand that. But what I'm trying to get at is he was my top rated wide receiver. So the question is, do I think he can be productive? And the answer is probably. Yeah, I think he can. I think, look, people are debating, is Michael Gallup going to be the wide receiver 2? Is CeeDee Lamb going to be the wide receiver 2? It's tough to say. It's probably going to be Gallup early on in the season for all the reasons you guys outlined before in terms of changing teams. And you guys have talked about it a lot in this podcast, so I'm not going to belabor the point. But a guy like CeeDee Lamb could be productive, but it might not be productive until October or November. I look at a player like Justin Jefferson. There's not really a lot of other target competition on there. Obviously, Adam Thielen is going to demand the most targets on the Minnesota Vikings, but he can't catch every single ball. So a player like Justin Jefferson, who they're saying he's probably going to play out of the slot, which means Adam Thielen is going to move from his typical slot position to the outside. but there's risk there. They're going to be a run-first team. There's still going to be development. I look at a player like Jalen Reagor, who, again, Deshaun Jackson, he is probably going to be the wide receiver 1 on that team. We don't know what's going to happen with Alshon Jeffrey. He could start on the PUP list, which means that Jalen Reagor could start his rookie season as, again, the wide receiver 2 on that team. But we know that the best 2 receivers on that team are actually the tight ends, Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz. So the question is, when will these guys be productive? Will they have productive games? I think they will. But ultimately, in season long, what we want is we want a reliable wide receiver that we can trust on a weekly basis. So I typically am fading the rookie wide receivers this year. I'm just not confident that you'll be able to start them in your lineup, kind of the set it and forget it mentality. There's just so many other guys that I would be more comfortable with on my team, especially at the ADPs that some of these guys are going at.
How about you, Geek? Are there any wide receivers that you think have a chance to be kind of like how AJ Brown, DK Metcalf late in the season? I mean, the statistics and history shows us a couple of these guys, even in the most adverse conditions, are going to end up being productive, and usually fading them all is the right move. But if you had to pick one, Geek, who do you think it's going to be? Who's going to be the guy that is valuable in redraft?
There's more than one. So there are going to be and yes, Shane, I agree. Some of them are going to be later in the season. Some of them will happen earlier. My top pick in terms of rookie wide receiver that can make an impact is Jerry Jeudy. I like him much more than CeeDee Lamb for his potential, because the position he plays on his team is currently unoccupied, and that is good, right? I want a possession wide receiver on a team that doesn't have one, because they're going to have to throw to him. So I think, and he is NFL ready as any wide receiver ever coming in is going to be. So Jerry Jeudy's my favorite. He's a guy I would draft early. You mentioned some other names, Jalen Reagor, Jefferson. These guys are in situations that are going to force their team to integrate them quickly. I could almost say the same for Henry Ruggs. I can almost say the same. I kind of feel like it should be the
maybe.
same.
They
don't have wide receivers.
You know what's funny though, Geek, about what you just said, and I'll let you continue on, is that Henry Ruggs, I mean, you and I both agree that Jerry Jeudy should have been taken by the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, I love Ruggs. There's no bigger Ruggs guy than me on this podcast. I love Ruggs, but we all agree Jerry Jeudy, you and I, we'll have him as our wide receiver 1. He's only 20 years old, looks like Antonio Brown route running skills. But Henry Ruggs the narrative on him is that he's this deep threat. Most of his passes were caught underneath, and he does that Odell Beckham thing where he takes slants to the house. Whereas Jerry Jeudy in college, remember they were teammates, was more of the deep pass guy. So, yeah, I mean, I'll continue on.
People get a weird rap for being fast. I don't know what it is, but when you're fast, all of a sudden you're a burner. But that's not the position he played in college. Ruggs, I'm looking for opportunity in the. So these are best ball plays much more than guys I'm excited about in my season long draft, because I think it does take time for these guys to come around. I don't think everybody's going to be doing great. Although Odell did pretty good, pretty quick. Like by game 4 or 5 of his rookie season, he was like, "Oh shit, this guy's the real deal."
But Odell is special. He's special.
He was hurt, and then as soon as he came back, he was like, "Oh my god, all right." So
I got a question for you though, Geek, about Jerry Jeudy. So where Jerry Jeudy is great. I mean, obviously it's his route running, it's his ability to get separation. Are we confident that Drew Lock is accurate?
No, I'm not. But I'm looking for opportunity on your team. Like, if you've heard my rants, you've already understood that I've screamed and yelled not to draft Courtland Sutton. That's a very dangerous pick. He was going way too high. He's one of these guys that I have like a rant about. But Jeudy plays a better role for any quarterback's going to have an easier time. Just like Jeudy is an elite route runner. Like, this guy is very, very special at this. Antonio Brown is not a bad comparison right now. Listen, if he's going to turn into Antonio Brown, that would be like unbelievable. But that's not a bad comparison when he is a burner. So he's not a burner. He's just a spectacular route runner to the point, and he's fast to the point where he's going to be open. And that's what Drew Lock is going to need, a guy who's open. It's one thing to catch Courtland Sutton as a giant man and throw touchdowns to him, but rookie quarterbacks definitely struggle in red zone. They very much struggle throwing for touchdowns. So like, that's where things tighten up. It's much harder to throw for touchdowns than it is in between the 20s to pile up yardage and have a yardage and yak wide receiver like Judy do some damage instead of a guy like Courtland Sutton, again, who needs to be catching touchdown passes from essentially what is a rookie quarterback. And again, rookies struggle.
He's not. I mean, Drew Lock he's played 6 games in the NFL. I mean, he did it right.
All young quarterbacks struggle to throw for touchdowns. That is even really great ones. When you get to the red zone, this is the hardest part of the field to deal with. You're inside the 20. They all have a hard time with it, which is why like teams like Cleveland with Baker Mayfield, they always want to protect the quarterback. They want to try to do a lot more running. Like a young quarterback tends to lead to more running back touchdowns because it's hard for the young quarterback to deal with the situation of a goal line red zone play.
I want to say something though that where I agree with Shane. So if Shane has CeeDee Lamb as his number 1 rookie wide receiver, and for good reason, he was. If you watch the film on him, if you look at the metrics,
I'm sure he's great.
Wait, hold on.
I'm veterans ahead of him. It doesn't matter.
Hold on.
Best guy in the world, and Dak is a better quarterback.
Hold on. Let me give you let me make the point, and then I'm going to address that issue for you. Right. So everyone said the same thing about Julio Jones when he came in there. He said, we love him. He's got all these metrics. He's great. But hold on. You got to let me make this point, and then I'll let you counter, okay?
This is why I listen to the show, by the way. This is why.
Because everyone's like, Julio Jones has all these, but Roddy White's there. He's a dominant target hog. Julio Jones, he's just not going to get the targets. Then what happens? Julio Jones comes in and like by game 1, you're like, okay, we have a superstar right here. We have to entertain that is possible with CeeDee Lamb.
It's possible, but again, that was one guy. We've got 2 in front of him, and that's the problem here. The problem is 2 in front. I'm accepting of the fact, for example, that Jerry Jeudy has Courtland Sutton on that team. How about we could talk about Jefferson has Thielen, but I think Jefferson will be fine. I want opportunity in the freshman. I keep saying freshman in the rookie season. Opportunity trumps talent by a million. All I care about is opportunity. Who is going to have an opportunity? That's where Jalen Reagor comes in. There's no other wide receiver on the
but talent garners more opportunity in the wide receiver position.
Talent will lead to success, but opportunity allows the talent to blossom. So you could be the most talented guy in the world, but if they're not putting you out there, then you're not going to be productive for my fantasy team. So I don't give a fuck about you. Right now, we have 2 things going on. We have the corona going to be taking players out 4 or 5 weeks at a time. So yeah, I think some of these, having depth and these guys who can step into a situation, like that's the situation where CeeDee Lamb explodes. You know what happens? Cooper gets hurt. Cooper gets the Rona. Now, oh shit, it's fucking CeeDee Lamb time, motherfucker. Right? That's when it happens. So I'm not saying it can't happen, but as soon as when Amari Cooper and his $40 million contract is on the field, and Gallup is out there doing his thing, and he's good. We agree that Gallup is like really good. CeeDee Lamb's like the 3rd guy. Listen, it was Randall Cobb. Is the Randall Cobb of the group. He'll have a good game here or there, but it's not going to lead to consistent production to where I'd be I want it more for a best ball. Because I'm worried there'll be weeks where he gets, 2 receptions for 12 yards, and that's going to happen. You don't want that guy killing your team that week. He needs something to happen.
You bring up a really good point, and I think it's extremely valid. Like, ultimately, you could be the best player on the field, but if you're not getting the ball, then you're not going to score fantasy points, and that's all we care about. We care about fantasy points and opportunity, right? But I think it's a fallacy to think that, okay, like Austin Hooper, for example, got a lot of targets last year. He's a really good tight end. He earned those targets, but he's going now to a Cleveland team where it's not as good. You guys remember when there was a bit of a feud on Twitter between Michael Thomas and Devontae Parker, right? And Devontae Parker was saying, well, if I was getting 12, 15 targets a game, well, then, yeah, I would put up the same sort of production as you, Michael Thomas. But targets are earned. Never forget it. The best player on the field, it might take a little bit of time with these rookies, but the best player on the field is going to get the targets. I mean, I think about last year, like a guy like A.J. Brown, who a lot of people were fading him in the pre-draft process. A lot of people had A.J. Brown as one of their top 1, 2, 3 wide receivers on the board, but they were reluctant when he went to the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, that's me. I went totally nutless. I moved him from 1 to 10, which honestly is a low moment of my fantasy analyst career for me, just because of landing off.
It's a
But
learning experience.
It allowed me to get him in like all of our leagues. So that was cool.
It's terrible.
But I think it just illustrates the point that, we might like, I love CeeDee Lamb. I think that I call him Baby Hopkins. I think that when I watch him, he reminds me a lot of a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. I love Jerry Jeudy. I love Jalen Reagor. I mean, I love all these wide receivers, but I just worry at the start of the season, there's going to be a learning curve. There's so many variables, and we could debate till we're blue in the face about who is the better rookie wide receiver to draft on our teams. The reality, guys, on my teams, I'm probably not going to have any of these guys on my season-long teams. Yes, I'll get some shares of them in best ball because I'm doing a lot of best balls, and you don't need to choose the weeks you need to start them. But when I'm drafting my team, I want players that I can trust in my starting lineup. And look, I get it. By week 7 or 8, there's going to be injuries. Half my team is going to have the coronavirus and going to be on my IR spot, etc. But at that point, you're kind of playing the waiver wire anyways. And maybe that'll be the opportunity to draft these rookies. But other teams are going to have the same issues, which means that if they drafted Jerry Jeudy and you did not, Jerry Jeudy might be on the waiver wire in week 5. And maybe you take him a week early and you secure him. So there's a little bit of game theory there. Do you want to draft these guys, or you want to pick them up off the waiver wire in week 6?
Yeah, most of them are going undrafted anyway. Again, it's a pretty deep league, and it's really a best ball play more than anything else when we start talking about rookie wide receivers going off that most leagues just are not that deep. Now, there are some wide receivers that you have on your list, and there's one guy who's been rising up draft boards like crazy this season. And I'm seeing you have him ranked 10th overall, and that's Allen Robinson, Chicago Bears, wide receiver. Never really an appreciated wide receiver at all. He's been good every year. Never had a quarterback. Still doesn't have a quarterback. But yet here he is, ranked 10th overall. You've got him ahead of Adam Thielen, who has no competition. Amari Cooper, we know what he can do. Juju Smith-Schuster, he's been spectacular when Ben has been healthy. So a lot of really good names here. A.J. Brown, the aforementioned.
Yes.
And Sez has been a big booster of Allen Robinson this year as well. So my question is, this seems a little bit high for Allen Robinson. This is probably above what his ADP is. So give me the reason why you like Allen Robinson more than the field.
Okay, if I was to ask you what position did Allen Robinson finish overall in wide receivers in PPR leagues last year, what would you say? Just top of your head, what do you think?
Wide receiver 12.
He finished as a number 8 wide receiver last year in PPR leagues. And why does that matter? Because I don't care about perception. I want to get the best player on my team. We nailed it. Look, Alan and I'm not sure how you feel about a guy like Anthony Miller, Geek, but we love Anthony Miller, but he is not going to usurp touches and targets away from Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson, he's in a good situation. We've talked about this before. He's either going to get Mitchell Trubisky, who I think that Mitchell Trubisky is going to start the season, but he's going to have that really short leash, and he's going to be yanked out pretty early in the season if he's not playing well. And then he'll get a potential quarterback upgrade.
Wait. You just said something that I need to stop. What do you mean if he's not playing well? We're talking about Mitch Trubisky.
When he's not playing well. Okay,
don't qualify that.
MVP
when
Mitch.
he sucks, which is probably week 1 or 2, he's fucking gone. And
wait, hold on, Geek. Now I'm gonna correct you. You were saying if and when, and you're saying week 1 or 2. Do you remember that game where the Houston Texans they said no, we're gonna wait on Deshaun Watson, we're gonna wait, and then after the first quarter of Tom Savage, whoever was out there, Brian Hoyer, I don't remember who it was. It was was like one series, and then Deshaun Watson came in. We could see a leash that is 1 or 2 series for that.
I mean, it could be the first game. It could be, that's right.
Yeah,
and by the way, you've heard my screams about Bill O'Brien as well here many times. So yeah, you're going to start Tom Savage over Deshaun Watson. Why?
That was crazy.
It's not going to be long till Mitch Trubisky is out. Let's be real.
Okay, let's assume it's Nick Foles, and we'll say Nick Foles is an upgrade. The thing that I think is almost counterintuitive sometimes is if you've got a very clear wide receiver 1 on a team with an average quarterback, that's almost better for fantasy than to have, say, like a wide receiver on, I don't know, like a team like the Saints. I mean, obviously Michael Thomas is Michael Thomas, but we know Drew Brees is going to throw to the open wide receiver. I'm not confident Mitch Trubisky can see the second open wide receiver. Allen Robinson had 154 targets last year. 154 targets last year. Who's to say he's not going to be able to repeat that last year? We just had the conversation about opportunity is king. Mitchell Trubisky is going to throw to his best wide receiver because I'm not confident he can get Anthony Miller the ball. It's the same reason I love DJ Chark this year. It's the same reason I love Terry McLaurin this year. These guys, there's only one wide receiver one in those towns. They're average quarterbacks, and the average quarterbacks are going to go with the guy they trust the most because they can't be throwing to the fifth wide receiver in 5 crazy wide receiver sets like a Drew Brees might be able to. So I like the opportunity. He's showing the upside. Look, he only scored 7 touchdowns last year. So I like a little bit of growth there. But Allen Robinson, to me, is a guy who's got a very high floor because he's going to get the targets. And who's to say with all those targets, he doesn't get 10 touchdowns next year? Touchdowns are very hard to predict. So it could be way, way up next year. It's just, I'm so comfortable drafting Allen Robinson as my wide receiver 1 as a top 10 wide receiver.
I'm with you on it. I love Allen Robinson. I think he is at WR10. He's kind of priced essentially at his peak, so to speak, at his elite top end upside, just because of the quarterback situation in Chicago. It's not getting that much better with Nick Foles in there. What about you, Says? You have anybody rising up your draft board that in the last few weeks or so where you might not have been that excited about them, but now you're kind of coming around to, you know what, I like this guy and I like this guy more than what I thought, or even more than his ADP.
So I was just looking back at the Beat Chris List draft that I did, $350 high stakes draft, and I was looking to see, because I took Allen Robinson in that draft just before I go on to your next question.
Where did you take him?
I took him in the 3.2 as the wide receiver 5.
Wide receiver 5. So you took Allen Robinson, to be clear, ahead of the
1, 2,
Evans,
3,
Godwin.
4, 5. Oh, sorry. Wide receiver 7.
Okay, so Evans and Godwin off the board, and then you take
here. This is the wide receiver order it went. Michael Thomas went at pick 5 overall. Adams went at pick 10 overall. That was it for the first round. The guys in the second round: Hopkins is the wide receiver 3. 4 was Hill. 5 was Godwin. 6 was Julio Jones, and then I took Allen Robinson as the wide receiver 7 in the third round.
So in ADP, you got, I guess, Evans sitting there, DJ Moore,
Galladay
is a big name. Galladay is an interesting one that high up. He does look good with Stafford out there, but man, if his production is really similar to Marvin Jones Jr.
Yeah. But just to go back to what you said, is that I'll have him actually even higher than Shane. I'll have him as the wide receiver 7. So because the quarterback play is going to be good better from Chicago, because if it's not Mitch Trubisky, right, then it's going to be Nick Foles. Like, if Mitch Trubisky is playing well, then he'll be the quarterback. If he's not playing well, then he won't be. And we all know at least Nick Foles could be stabilizing force. So you'd ask me, though, is there someone that's moving up and down the rankings for me? And yes, is the short answer. And it's Shane and I had talked about this offline. We talked about Calvin Ridley. Now, we all like Calvin Ridley. We see the opportunity there. He's going to be the wide receiver 2. Julio Jones has tapped out. Like, he's going to get his 150, 160 targets. There's no room for more. Now, Austin Hooper, who had 80 catches, I don't know how many targets he had, but he's off the team. Russell Gage is the third receiver. No one thinks that he's going to light the world on fire. So this is the season that we could safely project Calvin Ridley for 120 plus, 130 plus targets, right? But it seems in all these drafts, these best ball drafts, unless I'm forcing the pick, I never get him. So you're right to rank him. Shane has him as the wide receiver 24. I have him quite a bit higher. I have him as like the wide receiver 16 or 15, and I'm even thinking about moving him up to about 13, 14, right? But
I mean, I'm sorry, but Shane, to have Keenan Allen ahead of anybody is nutless monkey, bro. Keenan Allen, it's nutless because, yes, his ADP says it. To have Keenan Allen at 18, because I'm looking at these, I'm like, oh, where would I move Ridley up, right? Keenan Allen is the guy that does not belong in the top 24. He doesn't belong in the top 30 of wide receivers this season. Fucking Tyrod Taylor.
Wait, hold on. Tell him why, and then give Shane a chance to rebut. Tell him why. Give him your 3 bullet points, and then let Shane rebut this.
I'm going to. No, I've said this before. Keenan Allen is a volume-based wide receiver. That's his skill set. He puts up big games, when he gets 12 plus targets, you're talking about having a quarterback on that team in Tyrod Taylor, or a rookie, which is borderline worse, but in Tyrod Taylor, who will throw 18 to 20 total targets in a game. They're going to rely on the run. A bunch of those targets are going to go to Austin Eckler. And now you've got Henry, you've got Hunter Henry, you've got Mike Williams on the outside, you've got Keenan. Too many people. He will not get the volume. He's going to bust.
Okay, Tyrod Taylor is a low depth of target type of quarterback, but he's very accurate. The average yards per target last year for Keenan Allen was 8.05. The year before that, 8.79. The year before that, 8.76. This guy is not a downfield kind of guy. He is a possession wide receiver. Last year, he had 149 targets. Year before that, he's been north of at least 135 targets the last 3 years. I get it. Phillip Rivers is not there. But here's the thing, Geek. Hunter Henry, as much as we've loved him the last 3 or 4 years, he hasn't really produced what fantasy owners thought he was going to produce. He's more of a touchdown threat. Mike Williams, look, we saw last year when the touchdowns regressed to, I believe it was 3 or 4 touchdowns last year. Don't have the numbers right in front of me. He's essentially a non-factor, but he's a deep field kind of guy. If we're not really confident that these guys are going to be super productive, being able to go downfield, I think that the way that they're going to win the ball or win games is by keeping possession. So it's going to be a lot of passes to Austin Eckler, and it's going to be a lot of passes to Keenan Allen. I'm confident this year that if you're drafting Keenan Allen as your wide receiver 2, potentially wide receiver 3, just depending on how you're looking at it, that you're going to be very happy getting him in the 5th round. And he's going to be a very solid player to have on your team that's going to have a pretty good floor. He's not going to score a lot of touchdowns. That's just the reality of a guy like Keenan Allen. But where you're drafting him, you don't need to bank on that. Like, I like him better than a Devontae Parker because I trust him more than Devontae Parker.
The key guy that set Geek off, and thank God he said it, because I would have had to say it too, is you have him above DJ Shark. You said who you did fairly say you want to bump up. DK Metcalf, Calvin Ridley. Now that one alone, Calvin Ridley seems like he has the higher floor and higher ceiling. Now, again, could it happen? Sure, and you don't need to do it on ADP. I just don't see the case that that Calvin Ridley is set up for the perfect. He's set up in the Keenan Allen scenario for targets. That's what I'm saying. Like Keenan Allen, I think there's a real danger of 100 or less targets, whereas I think Calvin Ridley's floor is about 120 targets.
So you guys basically saying that like the Chargers are going to be like the least productive offense in the NFL next year? Is that what you're predicting?
No, you're also discounting. Yes.
Okay.
But also, yes, they will be. But also, you're discounting that Austin Eckler is there, taking up those exact targets that you were expecting to go.
But Austin Eckler was there last year. Not much has changed. There's no Melvin Gordon
with Phillip Rivers slinging it 36 times a game. Now you've got Tyrod Taylor, 18 targets to go around. Eckler's getting 6 or 7 of those, right? Tight end. There's just not 12 targets to go for Keenan Allen here. I mean, I think it's absolute madness because he's not going to score touchdowns. It's absolute madness to have this guy ahead of Devontae Parker, ahead of DJ Shark, ahead of DK Metcalf, who's going to be spectacular. I can make an argument for Courtland Sutton, but Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin, every single one of those guys, every single one.
Here's a better question for him. What round would you comfortably take Keenan Allen and Shane? I know it all depends on roster construction, all that kind of stuff, but where do you see because he's going in like the 5th round, and every time Geek talks about this all the time. He's one of those players. When he gets drafted, I'm like, oh, good. One of my guys is going to fall to me. So where are you comfortably taking Keenan Allen, Shane?
Yeah, I mean, so right now he's going as the 24th wide receiver, 56 overall. So it's right around that 5th round. To be honest with you, I don't really own a lot of Keenan Allen because I'm typically drafting a running back in this position. That's just kind of how I'm building my teams. But it would probably be the 5th, 6th round. And, I will say that these rankings were from a couple weeks ago. And I've talked to Al a little bit that I definitely need to massage him a little bit. But 10 times out of 10, every single time, I'm drafting Keenan Allen ahead of Calvin Ridley. And the reason being is that Calvin Ridley has shown spurts. He's shown his upside. But he's still not the wide receiver 1 on that team. It's Julio's team. And it's Keenan Allen's team. Like, if the Chargers want to be productive,
I don't mean to. I'm going to let you finish your point, but I think that the point that I said something earlier, I just want to reiterate it, is that yes, it's Julio's team, but he's already tapped out. Like the Atlanta is going to throw the ball 600 times. They're always in the league leader in pass attempts, and Julio's going to get 150. He's going to get 160. It's happening. It's already carved out for him.
Mm-hmm.
The point is that there's a lot of targets left, and Calvin Ridley is the next option. So what's reasonably left for him? He's going to get, as a second wide receiver, the same amount of targets as Keenan Allen will be as a primary receiver. So it's the number.
He also, to be clear, has a quarterback who throws for touchdowns. Matt Ryan is going to throw for 30 touchdowns in a bad season, 28 in a good season. He's going to throw for 38 touchdowns. That's a lot of fucking touchdowns. You know how many touchdowns I predict a full season of Tyrod Taylor? 16, maybe 14. So there's
it's not gonna be a full season. You don't draft a Justin Herbert number 6.
It gets worse when you have Herbert in there.
Yeah, Geek is lower on Herbert than we are, Shane. We've watched extensive tape on Herbert. He's actually he will never be good as Herbert. One of my bold calls is that Justin Herbert's going to have a better season than Joe Burrow, and I'm sticking with that. I really believe that.
You want my bold call? You want my bold call? You're about to get it. He will never be good as Herbert until he.
You mean as Burrow?
Until he evolves into Bear. Then,
what are you talking about? Hold on a second. You're saying the same name twice. Re-say the sentence of what you're talking about.
He will never be good as Herbert.
Who won't be?
Herbert.
Herbert won't be as good as Herbert?
No, as a Herbert, he will never be good. When he becomes known as Bear, that's when he can excel. When he has the balls to correct people, like, dude, you've been calling me Herbert? It's actually pronounced Bear. Sorry. Like, he only gets to that level of confidence when he's good. So when he turns into Bear, mark my words.
Sorry, Shane, you got cut out of that conversation, man. But
mark my word.
It happens.
I got a question for you guys, though. Here's the thing about Calvin Ridley. Okay. So I like Calvin Ridley. You guys are making me sound like I don't like Calvin Ridley. I don't like where he's being drafted.
Calvin Ridley belongs ahead of Keenan Allen.
Okay, but does Calvin Ridley belong as the 39th overall player drafted as a wide receiver 16 drafted?
Probably not. No, I mean, I think that's where this conversation, that's a great question, Jay, because
look, guys,
that's where the conversation started with this point.
Yeah, and really what it comes down to is when I do my rankings, I want to go and I go through each position because I've done a number of best balls. I think I'm on like my 13th best balls of the season. Al knows we've been doing these things literally since February, right? So we've seen ADP shift and whatnot. When I'm doing my rankings, I feel like I would be doing a disservice to the subscribers of DFS Army if I'm in a position and I've got a choice, because it's a binary choice, right? That's what rankings are. Are you going to choose this wide receiver or are you going to choose that wide receiver? And it comes down to who would I rather have on my team? And I don't want Calvin Ridley on my team as my early 4th round pick. That's just, I'm never going to do that. And so I feel like he's more like in a tier. And one thing that Alan and I have talked about, and we've done it with our quarterbacks, and I need to adjust my rankings and update my rankings to create tiers, because I think tiers are so important, because we might have Calvin Ridley within the same tier of players. And maybe even Keenan Allen's in that same tier with you guys. It sounds like he's out, but maybe he is. And Calvin Ridley might be at the top of that tier for you guys, but he's at the bottom of that tier for me. That doesn't mean I hate Calvin Ridley. It just means that there's players that I would much rather have on my team. We talked about Courtland Sutton. I want Sutton on my team more than I want Calvin Ridley. I want DJ Chark. I want Tyler Lockett. Now, we can debate
against that.
Sorry?
I want to draft against those things. Because everybody, I like all of those guys better than Keenan Allen, but
that's fine, yeah.
All right.
Terry McLaurin, exciting. These are all names that to me are the exciting wide receivers this season. DJ Chark, you mentioned him. DJ Chark is the number 1 guy. He crushed with Fu Manchu at the Gardner Minshew. Is Fu Manchu a nickname for him? Fu Man Minshew?
I think that's the stash.
The
mustache.
I have a question for our last question of the day for both, and this is for both of you. We'll start with Geek and then we'll go into Shane. Just tell me one wide receiver you're not leaving your draft without. Start with Geek.
All right. Threw that at me at the last second.
Okay, we'll start with
I like to go.
We'll start with Shane.
Well, I do like to go. So I want to qualify that answer with, first of all, these are best ball leagues. that I've been drafting in. And so the player that's on like all of my teams would be much more along the lines of someone who's dropping in rankings and available late, and I think a useful asset, rather than, oh my God, I need like AJ Brown on every team this year because he had a great year last year. It's more, who is this little value piece that's always hanging out when I need a consistent player on my best ball team? And that is Jamison Crowder of the New York Football Jets. The reason he's always on my teams, he's just, no one wants him. He's there. He's available at a point in the draft where even like Emmanuel Sanders is gone. All of these secondary options are gone. And he's just always available late. I'll give you a second name. I'm going to give you two names. Jamison Crowder, consistent points, going to get multiple 20-point games over the course of the season, PPR special. He's not going anywhere, and that offense on the Jets loves to throw to the crossing wide receiver. And another name, and again, this is just because I have this guy ranked higher than everyone else, apparently. He's always there and available, and that's New England #1 wide receiver, N'Keal Harry. He's just always available. He's always there.
You made Shane happy.
There.
You made Shane happy with that one.
N'Keal Harry's the #1 wide receiver for the Patriots, I think. Why not? It's like the 13th, 15th round.
Who will have more receptions, Julian Edelman or N'Keal Harry? Who will have more yards?
N'Keal Harry, because Julian Edelman's going to get hurt. He's not going to want to play without Brady.
All right, so let's turn it to Shane then. Shane, who's a wide receiver that you're not leaving any draft that means anything to you? When we have that Banana Hammock Boys draft that we're in, any redraft league you're in, what is it? Who's a player you're not leaving your draft without?
Okay, so I'm going to go just real quick. I'm going to say a couple players here. So the player that I'm willing to reach on a little bit ahead of his ADP is DJ Chark. I really do think that he's going to take a step forward. I was having the conversation with Flex Matt the other day between Terry McLaurin and DJ Chark. Who would I rather have on my team? It's so close. But for me, it's DJ Chark. We talked about Gardner Minshew. I think he's going to be good. I mean, he's going to be a little bit inconsistent, but there's really one wide receiver on that team, and that's DJ Chark. People are saying that Leonard Fournette's going to take a step back. Maybe that's because DJ Chark takes a step forward. So he's a guy that I'm willing to reach on. In that ADP range, though, it's tough to say I'm going to walk away every draft with this guy, simply because if I'm on the turn or something like that, there's very little chance.
What if you're on the board?
Guy, yes.
What if you're on the board and Keenan Allen and DJ Chark are available? Who are you taking?
Yeah, to be honest with you, again, these rankings were from a couple weeks ago. I'm probably going to take DJ Chark there. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to take DJ Chark there.
But update your rankings then.
Make those decisions.
I know. Yeah, I have to. Absolutely.
Give those thoughts. Like, that's what we do on the show. I'll hammer Seslowsky with this. I'll be like, all right, you like DJ Chark? And I'll do one right now. Says, you like DJ Chark? Who you taking? Chark and Metcalf are on the board. Who you slamming?
Well, I mean, it's DJ Chark for me. I mean,
DJ Chark for you, Shane?
Same.
Yep. That's close. All right. McLaurin and DJ Chark are on the board. Who you grabbing there?
I like mentioned it. Yeah, I like Terry McLaurin here. I think Terry McLaurin, again, high floor, high ceiling player, whereas DJ Chark, we saw it last year. There was games where, and it was only his second year, but there was games where he disappeared, whereas Terry McLaurin in his rookie year just, stepped on the gas. He just looked the part. So, the Terry McLaurin is one of those players being drafted in the 5th round of drafts, probably belongs in like the early 3rd round, right near the.
How about you, Shane? McLaurin or Chark?
It's so close for me, but I'm probably going Chark.
There you go. All right. How about Devontae Parker, a guy I like a lot? Parker over Chark, Shane. Which one?
Ugh, man, that's so close. I mean, right now I do have him above him in my rankings, but I think that's going to change. Actually, it's funny. I had that decision on the clock just in a best ball currently, and I went Chark over Devontae Parker.
There you go. But you're thinking a lot about it. How about you, Seth?
Oh, absolutely.
Chark, Parker.
I'm not as high on Devontae Parker as the field is. Yes, it did look good. It was very consistent. He was very impressive last year, but it's just hard for me to erase the memory of those first 4 years. And I know sometimes people get into a rut, then they find their rhythm and go, boom. But I think there's going to be I'm lower on the Miami offense as a whole than most. And even though Preston Williams hurt his ACL in week 9, when he was there, he was the dominant wide receiver. I like Devontae Parker, but somebody else is going to like him a lot more than me in this draft.
No one else to throw to. Parker's on almost all of my teams.
Yeah, it's fair.
No one else to throw to.
I could see it.
Yeah.
Preston Williams is still going to be recovering. I find with my draft strategy, I'm typically waiting on tight end. I like to go a guy like Mike Gesicki late. And if I'm doing that, I know that in the back of my head, that's part of my plan. And that's why, gun to head, I'm probably going to be taking a guy like Chark, McLaurin over a guy like Devontae Parker. But it's super close. It's super close. If I'm doing 10 best balls, yeah.
These are all these names that are going to be winning people their leagues this year. It's this middle area. This is why, for me, I rarely get a top 12 wide receiver on any of my teams. I don't really have top 12 wide receivers on any teams. And this is the reason, because I really like this area of the draft. I think there are 3 or 4 WR1s in this group. I think all the names that we just talked about, McLaurin, Ridley, Metcalf, Shark, Parker, A.J. Brown, all going outside of the top 12, all have potential to be top 12 wide receivers this season. I think there are guys, it's just going to be potentially a good year for wide receiver, but I can see any one of those guys outscoring Kenny Golladay or DJ Moore or Adam Thielen or Juju or even Odell Beckham. Like, I can see any one of those guys, Mike Evans, outscoring them for the season. It wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't surprise me. So it's a really, really great part of the draft. And one of those things that we consider when we're putting these rankings is like, all right, really, really balls to the wall, money on the line. Who am I taking on the board if I'm sitting here staring at me in the face? Who am I going to go with? And, even like a Tyler Lockett, I move him down because I know Tyler Lockett. I know what he does. He has the 22-point games, but it's only on 5 receptions. And there are all those times when he doesn't get the big play for the touchdown where he only gets you 7 or 8. And it's like, man, that sucks. I hate the low volume guy. I want the guy who's getting 10 targets every single game, no matter what. So I look at these situations and I'm like, I like Tyler Lockett, but let somebody else take him. I'm going to take me some Terry McLaurin. I'm going to take me some Calvin Ridley, who I agree with you says 10 targets a game coming for Ridley. And when he's gotten targets, he's produced like a fucking animal, right? Every time they throw to him, he produces, and he produces like great because Julio's attracting all of that attention. Like, it's double production. It's the Roddy White when he was great with Julio years, potentially, that you have. So I don't know. That's just like wide receiver. I love that middle area. And sometimes I don't really know which ones I have a hard time choosing between them too. I'm like, I don't know, Chark, Metcalf, Sutton for me is
it's such a sweet area. It's such a sweet area in the draft. There's just so much talent. And look, we're trying to nitpick because that's what we do. But the reality is I probably would be cool and very happy with any one of these players on my team.
Except for Keenan Allen.
Hey, listen, guys, live
shot
on the air. We should do just a little friendly bet, like I'll pay your entry into a best ball league or something like that. Or you'll pay my entry into a best ball league. Who at end of the season, who's going to score more points, Calvin Ridley or Keenan Allen?
I am 100% down to do this bet. Okay. I will give you full 1 point PPR.
Sure.
Of course.
Okay, so in PPR leagues, end of the season, injuries be damned. It's kind of just rolling dice. We'll pay for one entry into a best ball league, a $10 best ball with best ball 10s, and that's down, on the table here. Mark it down. Says down.
I've got Ridley. Shane's got Keenan Allen.
Yes.
Mark it down. I'm almost willing to go. I'm almost willing to parlay this and say, not only will Ridley outscore Keenan Allen, but assuming I get a healthy season in the same number of games, because that's, it's kind of fucked if you don't. I'd add.
You want to do 2 points per game?
I'd add DK Metcalf. I'm going to do
total.
All right.
The conversation is about DK Metcalf. The conversation is Calvin Ridley.
All right,
Keenan
Calvin
Allen.
Ridley.
Just
Keenan
end of the
Allen.
season.
Give me Keenan. You pay for a $10
best
ball.
All right, here you go. Since you guys can't settle on that, I'm going to make the bet for you and just both agree or disagree to it. Okay, sure. Minimum 12 games played, right? Who has more yards?
No points. Fantasy.
No.
Who has more fantasy points after
per game? I don't care about yards. I don't care how you get them.
Listen, 12 games minimum. If one player has 11 games or less, bet is off. If it's 12 games or more, it doesn't matter injury, doesn't matter coronavirus, doesn't matter anything. Whoever 12 games a minimum, whoever has more fantasy points, total fantasy points.
That's fair. That's fine. I'm in.
Done.
All right. So with that, I actually want to mention one other thing, a little promotion. Nothing, not a promo of the site, but something I thought was really cool. Says this is right up your alley. Sirius Fantasy Radio contacted me, and they're doing like a Ring of Honor for their super fan listeners contest, and we're going to post that in the comment section below this video on YouTube, a link over there. And basically you go over there and you can talk about your favorite, your fantasy team, crazy things that happen, worst beats, things like that, favorite moments from different Sirius XM fantasy shows. So pretty cool little contest where, you know, you can win your spot on the Ring of Honor. They're giving out some free subscriptions and cool stuff like that. So we'll post that and drop some links in there as well. I wanted to mention it because it's cool. And Says, it seems like something you would be writing in because you're like the #1 super fan of Sirius XM Fantasy, especially the Chris List program, but some of the others as well. You're definitely known as a special guest on some of those shows. What do you say? You're going to try for the Ring of Honor?
Oh, absolutely. As soon as you mentioned it to me last night, I'm all over it.
Absolutely. So check that out. We'll tweet out a link to that. And that'll do it for the bold call.
Before we wrap up, just, you know, again, let's just underline the fact that Flex Shane is here with us. He'll be in the DFS Army Slack in the season long. You know, like I said, you can get him on Twitter, but also we want if you're in the Slack chat in the season long NFL room, it's Flex Shane. You could tag him in your post as well as me, as well as Geek, and we will give you some good personal feedback, which is a great reason to join DFS Army today.
That's right. Welcome in Flex Shane to the DFS Army season long family. We'll be doing a lot of these podcasts with us, and of course, in season, you know,
and he held his own today. He held his own. I mean, it's not easy to argue with you, Geek. You do make some great points. So, amongst the double barrel of fire, he did hold up. So, you did pass the test, Shane.
You hung in there.
Next show, we got to debate Leonard Fournette. We got to do it.
We could talk Fournette. We'll do running backs. But welcome to the show, everybody watching. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel if you want to get these alerts when we go live with these, or you want to get an email or whatever happens when you like and subscribe to something on YouTube. If you're listening to this through a podcast, of course, like and subscribe to that as well. It helps us out. It lets us know that you are watching, listening, and you like what we're doing and makes us want to do it again.
And remember, July 28th, we're having a very special guest on the Bull Call podcast, RotoWire's own Chris Liss from SiriusXM Fantasy Sports and from RotoWire fame. He is coming on the podcast. We hooked in a credible big-time guest. So on July 28th at 1 p.m., we'll be live, and certainly it'll be repeated on the podcast. We cannot wait for that.
Yeah, super excited to watch that. And we will be back, as always, next week with another Bull Call breakdown. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.